So here we are in the woods, and as you can see, not many weeds. In fact, no weeds at all. Just little stalks of other trees growing up here and there. And it's because of this mulch that we have on the ground here, natural mulch that falls down every year in the fall from the leaves on the trees and the pines, pine needles, and the seeds under the ground are in darkness, undisturbed, because of this wonderful covering on top of leaves and pine needles and branches, so that we have no weeds, as you can see. Everything I learned about weedless gardening, I learned from this wonderful book called Weedless Gardening, and it's by a man called Lee Reich. And he's really saved my hands from carpal tunnel syndrome for the past 10 years. I don't weed my garden anymore, thanks to him. Here's a lovely bag of topsoil and a lovely bag of organic compost. And now we add our peat moss. I don't need the whole of this, I need about half of it, so I'm just going to cut the bag. This is very crumbly stuff. Beautiful though. And what peat moss does is keep the moisture in the ground for your plants. And I live on a hill, so a lot of my soil gets depleted of moisture. This actually keeps it in there. So now it's like making a cake. I'm going to have to mix it all up. And the reason I don't just put compost on the soil is it can actually be too strong and burn my plants. So this is kind of dilutes the compost somewhat, and yet you're still getting the nutrients from the compost. The idea behind this is that you are gardening from the top down, which means that you never ever till your soil. The moment you till your soil, you're going to bring all the seeds that are lying dormant in darkness under the soil up to the surface, and they're going to say, hey, we can grow now, we have light, we have rain, we have sunlight. And even though this looks like a lot of hard work, you'll be so thankful you did this later, because you won't have any weeds. Well, that's actually not quite true. You will have some weeds, because some weeds fly in from other places and land on your soil, of course, and then they can grow there. But you'll get probably 80% less, at least, doing this. If you really diligently do this twice a year, spring and summer, or spring and fall. Spring and summer's best though, because you don't really want to compost plants in the fall, because that's when they're beginning to go to sleep for the winter. I love doing this. I've loved playing with dirt ever since I was 6 years old. I used to go out in the garden and make mud pies with the earth in my father's garden. Sometimes in places he didn't want me to do that, of course. But it's just a wonderful feel. You just feel this beautiful, soft mixture. Okay, I think pretty much done. And you know when you're done, once you start getting an even colour and all that very, very black soil and compost has turned a paler brown. So it's rather like milk chocolate. That's what you want to look at. So if you find any lumps like this one, just give it a bit of a crush through with your hands, because you want a nice look to your garden. And if you have a lumpy mixture, it doesn't look so good. And also the nutrients are having a harder time getting into the soil. So there we are. So I'm going to use this later to put my knees on it, because I'm going to be squatting on the ground. But just to begin with, I'm just going to start shaking this on. I want about 1 or 2 inches. I'm just going to smooth it out, and as I go, if I have any lumps, I'm going to squish them. Make it all nice and even, and your plants are just going to absolutely love you for it. When the rain comes, all the goodness in this topsoil and compost is going to go into the rest of the earth, deep down, and into the lovely roots of your plants and start nourishing them. And you'll get bigger blooms and no weeds, because this is acting like a mulch would. So make sure before you put this mixture on that there aren't any weeds on your ground underneath. If there are, you need to get rid of them. And if there are a lot, you will need to put newspaper down and wait for those weeds to die and put them in the dark so that they die first before you put your compost and peat moss and topsoil mixture on. Okay, so this area I actually want to plant, and it's covered in weeds. And even though it's underneath this lovely red burning bush here, it still gets a lot of sun when the sun comes over in that direction, and it's all dappled, as you can see anyway. So that's enough light. So in order to kill these weeds, I actually have to stop it having any light coming on them at all so that they can actually die. I'm going to spread my newspapers out on the weeds. And this really saves my hands. If I had to sit here and pluck out all the weeds that are here, first of all, it would take me a long time to clear it all out. This is just a small patch just to show you how to do it. And then I'm going to put some stones down. And what the stones will do is keep my paper in place so nothing blows away. And when I come back in a week's time, all these weeds will be dead and I'll be able to grow new plants in their place. So this is my friend's garden, and when she moved in here recently, she found the garden like this. All the plants covered with weeds. The weeds have run amok. She's going to have to black plastic all of this and restart, basically. Such a shame. But I've introduced her to the book Weedless Gardening by Lee Reich, and I hope that really helps her. I'm going to show you how to plant a plant without disturbing your soil, which you might seem is impossible because you're going to have to dig. But I'll show you how to do that. First of all, I need some newspaper to put the soil onto that I'm going to be digging up. So there's my newspaper, and I'm going to make a hole, and I'm going to be very careful that I don't disturb the soil surrounding my hole. And you'll see that the soil that I'm digging out is of a lighter colour than the topsoil and peat moss and compost that I put down earlier. I'm taking that out very carefully and trying not to disturb the rest of the soil. See that? I'm just keeping that really nice and not banged up at all. Okay, and here's my plant. It's actually mint, which will make actually a beautiful ground cover, as well as give me some lovely mint for mint tulips later on in the summer. I'm going to break this up. So this is made of coconut matting, and I'm just going to pull the back out a bit so that the roots can go down into the soil, and pop it in there. And actually I've dug the hole a little bit too low, so I'm going to put a bit of soil back in there from my pile. There we go, like that. And then I'm going to push the rest of the soil push it down. There. This soil in the newspaper here, I'm never ever going to put on my garden. I will throw it out because it's full of weeds, full of seeds. I'm going to water my little guy here. And then I'm going to cover again with my mixture so that I can keep any seeds out. That's it. So here's my vast collection of weeding tools that I've collected over the years. And there's one that I use for picking up dandelions in my grass, in my lawn. but the rest I haven't used probably for about 10 years. So here they all are. So here's this one, it's a weeding rake. You see how long the prongs are, that goes right down into the ground and drags the soil up to the surface. This one I actually do use occasionally, because it's good to get dandelion heads out of my lawn, but I don't use it for weeding. Here's another weeder kind of thing where you can scrape the ground, and of course as you do that you're going to bring up the soil from underneath. Here's a very similar weeding tool, a bit shallower, a little bit better actually, but still it's going to get too much soil. This one, you use a kind of cutting motion, and that's all very well, it looks very nice. You know, you can just cut under the soil and all your weeds come off the surface, but you've left the roots in to grow again. And the same with this one. It looks really great. You can get all the weeds up and then take them off the surface, and it all looks gorgeous, but you've left the roots in your soil and they're all going to just start growing again. And I used to use all of these to get rid of weeds in my garden, and within a few days I had the weeds all coming back. Now there is something that you can sprinkle on your earth that actually kills the weeds around your plants, but I don't think that's a very good idea because it's poison, and I want an organic garden. So I'm going to show you how to make some weed killer that's not going to hurt the environment, it's not going to hurt the soil, it's not going to pollute our rivers, because you're going to use it in a targeted way on your weeds. So you need a spray bottle. Here's the lid to the spray bottle, a little funnel, some salt, some vinegar, and some washing up liquid. And then a jug to measure, a teaspoon, and another measuring cup. Okay, so to begin with, we're going to pour in a pint of vinegar, and obviously if you want to make up a gallon, you'd have to multiply that by 8 to have a gallon. And then a quarter of a cup of salt. I've got a nice little measure here that tells me when I have a quarter of a cup, which is just about there. Pour that in, stir it around until it dissolves. It really needs to be dissolved well, otherwise it won't go through the sprayer top. So it'll clog if it's not dissolved. Okay, so that's dissolved now. It took a little while, but you can see it's gone from being more opaque to being clearer. Then a teaspoon of joy. And what this does is allows your mixture to adhere to the weed's leaves. So your washing up liquid will help the mixture adhere to your weed's leaves. So now I'm going to pour it in. Use a funnel so you don't spill. Vinegar's strong stuff, so you don't really want it spilling on other places. You also know if your salt has dissolved because there's nothing left in the bottom of your glass jar. And then here we go. And I'm ready to spray. I've been encouraging Irish moss to grow amongst my paving stones, but unfortunately it's crept to the edges, and I want to get rid of it with my wonderful mixture. So I'm going to go and spray them now, but I don't want to spray the rest of my flowers and hurt them. So here we go. I'm going to put my newspaper here to protect that plant, and then I can spray all the way along the edge here, and that's going to kill the Irish moss in this area, and it's going to look a lot prettier. There we go. 2 days later, they'll be gone. So here's where I sprayed 2 days ago, and you can see it's all gone brown and dying, and dead really. And here's where I didn't spray, and you can see it's all growing crazily. So I need to come back and spray that area, and then all of that will be gone. If you go to your local greenhouse, you'll see loads and loads of different ground covers, all different colours and shapes, and they make a very interesting look to your garden, and then you don't have to weed either.